Okay, so Samsung just announced two new devices for their foldable lineup, the Fold 4 and the Flip 4. And I was able to spend a little bit of time with both these devices last week, and they've made some interesting tweaks to these devices. So let's start with the Fold 4. The screens on the Fold 4, so both the inner screen and the outer screen, haven't changed in diagonal length, but they've changed in aspect ratio. So the Fold 4 is a slightly shorter, but not any wider device to hold. So compared to like the Fold 3, this was always like a relatively narrow device, same with like the previous folds of the years before. The Fold 4, it's not like chonky, it's not like a wide boy, like a stout phone like the Oppo Find N, but it is like when you pick it up in your hand, you can tell that there's a noticeable difference between last year's generation. Now visually, it's not a huge adjustment, there's just a little more width for the viewing experience. I don't think it affects content too much, it's more just for the overall usability of the phone. Like when you're watching content in the normal unfolded state, you're gonna get a slightly bigger image on the Fold 4 versus the Fold 3, but if you rotate it and you're watching it in like full screen, it's actually a little bit smaller on the Fold 4 than the Fold 3, just because of the difference in aspect ratio. But again, I don't think it's so much about the content viewing changes, it's more about the overall usability of having a little more width on that screen. Also, when you're using that front screen, just a wider front screen I've always felt was nicer. Like even on the Find N, it's like the extra width is better to me than the super narrow screen of the Fold devices. Now, in terms of the crease, I was surprised by the presence of that crease. Like not that there shouldn't be any crease at all, it's just the prominence of that crease. Like the Fold 1 and 2, they were pretty obvious. Fold 3, it dipped down a little bit. But when I saw this product from Oppo, that Find N with like very little crease. I mean, it's still visible, you can see it in this shot, but it's like, it's way less prominent than the Fold devices. I would have assumed that the Fold 4 would have been able to adapt this. Like it's a Samsung panel, couldn't they have done it in this as well? But like the Fold devices, like they're really obvious, right? In comparison. Now, it might just be the hinge, like maybe the way that Samsung does their hinge, they focus on trying to obtain that IPX8 water resistance, and maybe you gotta fold it a certain way. I don't know, but that crease was a little bit surprising. Okay, the under display camera. So on the Fold 4, there's an improved version of this camera that's mounted underneath the display. And what makes it better is the pixel density of the screen on top of that camera. So the way these things work is that they turn these pixels on and off depending on if the camera's in use. And this year, it is much less noticeable. And if you look at the Fold 3 from last year, the artifacting was pretty obvious. It is better this year, but I feel like other devices can still do it better. Like if you look at the ZTE, AXON 40, that has an almost flawless version of this, at least in terms of the visual image on top, but it's better this year. Now, the back camera on the Fold 4 is surprisingly similar looking to the one on the Fold 3. It's actually strange to me because normally when it comes to like phone manufacturers, we're used to the companies changing this camera section pretty frequently. Like every year they have an opportunity to change it because it just makes the old one old. Now the camera hardware has been updated quite a bit. So we have a 50 megapixel main shooter as well as a 3x optical zoom. So this new camera hardware combined with that new Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip, I imagine the images will be better on this device. The battery remains unchanged. It's still 4,400 milliamp hours. Bigger would have always been better, but I imagine there's constraints, like physical constraints with the size of this device. There's also this case that I thought was really cool. So it's a case for the Fold 4, and it has a kickstand component, so you can pop it out and you can watch your shows full screen, hands-free, but you can pop off that kickstand part and you can attach a holder for the S Pen. And it seems so simple, but when I saw this, the functionality of it seemed awesome, and it just seemed like something that I would want to use, so I had to show it to you guys. So the Fold 4 comes in a few colors this year. The color that really sticks out to me is this gray-green color. I think it looks really nice, but I'm a sucker for gray things, as you can see in my studio. Okay, the Flip 4. So this also comes in a few more colors this year. There's a purple color and a nice blue color, which I thought was kind of cool. The fingerprint sensor. So there were some rumors about how it would be an under-display fingerprint sensor on the Flip 4. It's not. It's still mounted on the side. The hinge, though, has supposedly changed. It's now a significantly smaller hinge mechanism. Now, on these Flip devices, most of the hinge is like hidden behind the device itself. It's only a portion of it that's exposed, but it's supposed to be like 6 millimeters shorter, and I don't think the aesthetics of it has changed when you open and close the device. It doesn't seem like it's a visually obvious change, but because of that reduction in size of the hinge, they're able to put a larger battery into this device. It's now at 3,700 milliamp hours as opposed to the Flip 3 being 3,300, so it's like a 12% bump in battery size. That's pretty significant. Now in terms of the screen, I think it's pretty much the same as the one on the Flip 3. It seems to be the same size and resolution as before. The camera hardware doesn't look like it's changed much. It's still got the 12 megapixel main shooter and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Now imagine even with that same hardware, they'll be able to take better images just because the processor is better. But camera system, I don't think you should expect too much of a change from the previous generation. Now the charging speeds are a bit faster this year on both devices. They both take up to 25 watt wired charging and 15 watt wireless charging. That's up from the 15 and 10 from the previous generation. But the overall updates this year feel like refinement. They're not like big steps in innovation. There's not like crazy tech that's being added to it. It does feel like they've taken some products that work and then refined them a bit to make them a little bit more appealing. But the thing that I feel like they should have tweaked the most, but didn't, is the pricing. So these are still very expensive. It's $1,000 for the Flip and $1,800 for the Fold. Now, there were rumors, and I was most hopeful for these, that there would be like a cheaper foldable this year from Samsung, but it seems like that ain't the case, at least not yet. Okay, there you have it. First look at the new foldables from Samsung.